evening, everyone. I'll start out in 1973. Let me see your hand if you were here in 1973 when Apex had its centennial celebration. There's one, Mr. Staley Smith. Anybody else was here in 1973? All right. That should tell you something. Who was born in 73? Oh. That should tell you something right there about the demographic of Apex. And what I mean by demographic in that sense of the word is we're not made up of people who grew up here anymore. And that changed somewhere around 1979. That's my guess. When I was in high school at Apex High School, and IBM started moving people down from Fishkill, New York, and that was the first exposure I had to a New York accent that wasn't on TV wearing a cop's uniform. You know? Our growth rate in January a year ago was at the 5% run rate. So I'm using the term run rate. I'm basically talking about like a little sliding 3-month window, right? So it's either going up or it's kind of going down. From January to April, it went up to 6. And from April to about July, it went up to 7. And then by the time we got to Thanksgiving, it was right around 8. So for the last 3 months, we've been growing at a run rate of 8% growth in Apex. Now, I will say this for everybody who's been around here. That 8% growth rate, and by the way, that's an 8% annualized, okay? So I took a 3-month window but multiplied it out as if it were a year, right? This is not the first time Apex has grown at that rate. It's happened many times before. It happened in the 90s, it happened in the 70s, it happened in the 50s. It happened in the 30s. But this is the first time we've had a significant size. I'm going to stay closer to the middle here. This is the first time we've had this significant of a size of population that I can say a few things. One, Apex current population as of today is 51,510. You think about that number for a second. Let's put that in perspective. We have 532 municipalities in North Carolina. Did you know Apex is larger than 512 of them? That makes us the 19th largest municipality in the entire state. Did you know that? So what that means is we're now on the radar for people who are in another state and have never come to North Carolina. They still might start hearing about Apex. We're in the middle of an urbanization of America. It's happening all over, not just Wake County, not just North Carolina, but every state is seeing people leaving sort of the rural areas, or people who are coming in are moving towards urban centers rather than going out to find, I'm going to have my own 40 acres, Dad, and I'm going to start my own farm, Dad, right? That was 70 years ago. Not so much now. The urbanization is a phenomenon, but it's not something we can control here in Apex. And because we live in the proximity of the city of Raleigh, we're going to get people who don't want to live in Raleigh, but they want to live near Raleigh. And, oh, by the way, this is the best place to live in America, but I'm not going to tell anybody else outside the state anymore. I'm done with that. I'm done with that. Yes, thanks. But we do have a lot going on for us. One of the great things we have is our downtown. And people like Staley Smith and myself, who remember the days of going to downtown on our bicycle, because we weren't old enough to drive yet, and we would go hit up the grocery store and buy a Mountain Dew out of a glass bottle, out of one of those push-open doors that was a refrigerator, and you'd pull it up, and you'd open it from the bottle opener on the side, and you would chug it, and if the owner wasn't there, you'd jump up on the counter and sip it and drink it, right? Those are the days that I remember. And those are almost emotional and nostalgic for me. Which makes it even harder for me when people I went to high school with tell me that this town is ruined because of the growth. And I say, it's not ruined because of the growth, it's just not the way you remembered it. It can be ruined, surely, but we don't want to go there. We want to manage our growth in a sane way. Now, I don't want to scare everybody with growth talk, but we have to reckon with it. There it is, right now, even with the number of houses that are being built, and we're issuing about 3 COs. For those of you, that's a residential certificate of occupancy, right? It means somebody can live in the house. We're issuing about 3 a day, on average. And that brings about 10 people to the area. That's happening every day. Even with that, I read an article in the Triangle Business Journal that said that there still is more demand than there are homes in Wake County. So that means people want to move here. They're moving into apartments. They're renting small houses until they can get theirs built or they can find the one they want to buy. The reason I'm bringing all this up is because I don't want that to be the thing we don't talk about because it's scary. We have to talk about it. So how do we manage that growth? Or even a bigger question, as the mayor, I want to know, are we doing what we can do as a town government to plan for that growth in the future, manage our infrastructure planning so that the infrastructure is there and we can handle the growth that comes? And maybe there are some things we can do along the way. Now, process-wise, and Alan Manus is here, he knows this process very well. Process-wise, somebody wants to develop, they go talk to a farmer, they talk to another farmer, they try to buy some land, they put together some land, they say, let me see if I can get that zone for whatever I want to put there. That's called land development, right? If they get it through the first level of government approvals, then they get it rezoned for whatever that use is. And then that rezoning then means they can go off, do some further design work, and then create the subdivision plan where they're going to create lots to sell off and build houses on. Or, in some cases, they're non-residential. It could be a daycare, as you've seen a couple of them going up right near city center, sort of town hall area. You may see retail establishments. We saw the Publix going up over down Olive Chapel Road, right? That was a construction project, right? The reason that's important is because that process from seeking land, developing it, building on it, and then selling off parcels to owners, future owners, and having that part of the annexed town limits. That process can take anywhere from maybe 24 to 30 months at the inside, the shortest side, can take 8-10 years in a lot of cases, depending on the economy. And the reason I point that out is because things that happened in the past are still affecting us today. So, for example, I was on the town council from 2009 to 2013. Prior to that, I was on the planning board. When I decided not to run for re-election, I took 2014 off. Did something with my wife, did something with my kids, caught up on my honey-do list. When I finally got re-engaged around here, there were new projects I'd never heard of. You know, Arcadia Ridge and Riley's Pond and Stillwater and Sweetwater. I'd not heard any of those names. But they came, right? They got rezoned. So now we're seeing COs being issued to those, and we've actually seen there's right many people in one of those. If you may live in one of those, I don't know. So that process, there's still a tail end to that. The reason I think that's important to recognize is the rezonings at the front end are what tell you what's coming down the pipe. What we saw this past year, calendar year, from January until July, there were maybe 4 or 5 rezoning requests every month. And they varied from, 30 acres to 100 acres. or more. But July, they dropped off to about 1 or none a month for the rest of the calendar year. So, if you know how that curve looks, that means that within a year or two, we're going to start seeing things slowly roll down. Now, we know that this is part of the normal economic cycle of things. Everybody remember 2008? Anybody remember trying to sell a house in 2008? It was not a good time. And in fact, it was really that time that I was really glad I didn't live in Florida or Las Vegas, Nevada, or Detroit, Michigan, or places like that. They had real housing crises. We here were fortunate that everything kind of went flatline for a while. Maybe flatline's the wrong word. Flat, right? We just had very little activity. Do we have the infrastructure to grow? Let's go through some of them, shall we? So let's talk about some of the services we offer in the town. I'll start with the easiest one, sewer. First of all, if the public works director heard this, he would say, it's the easiest way to clear a room, you start talking about sewer. We have great sewer capacity in Apex. Many of you know in 2013 we brought online one of the hardest names of buildings to pronounce, which is the Western Wake Water Reclamation Facility, which is our treatment facility sort of near Sharon Harris Nuclear Plant. I want to connect the two, but just over in that area. That building, that processing plant, we share with Cary. We're co-owners. We're about 1/3, they own about 2/3, roughly. We've got sewage capacity for years and years. So sewer, infrastructure, not a problem. Let's talk about water. Well, we're planning to spend about $20 million over the next 5 years improving the water infrastructure. What does that mean? It means we need pumps, substations, or we need a processing plant. We need a low pressure zone. If any of you have been out to Western Apex, you realize if you follow topography, it kind of drops off a little as you're going closer and closer to the lake. Problem is, when our water is in the tank at Tingen Road, you know the big UFO up on stilts? That 1.5 million gallons in that tank, by the time it flows out that far, is pretty highly pressurized. And so we need to add some low pressure zone piping and equipment somewhere around the Kelly Road area. And we're also going to add another 1 million gallon water tank in the air. So we'll have a total of 4 million gallons of water in the air. Now, we get our water from somewhere. It comes from Jordan Lake, or the proper name is the B. Everett Jordan Reservoir. That lake is going to be enlarged. There's a regional effort right now to add another 35% volume to that lake or that area. I'm not sure exactly if it'll be, and this hasn't been solved yet, by the way. This is a 15-year effort. But the plan, the long-term plan, is to make sure that we have water for this area for 50 more years. And that's what they're working on now. So years from now, they'll have to work on the next 50, right? But where that happens, how that happens, is up to the engineers. But they know that's the general location because Jordan supplies water to Apex, to Cary, and to Durham. And I believe that's it, unless somebody knows different. So that's our fresh water. Let's talk about electric. So yes, Apex has its own electric, for those of you who didn't know. We have our own electric utility. Obviously, we don't make our own electricity, but we do have a nuclear plant very nearby, as many of you may recently have found out. In a survey from 25 years ago, that was the number one complaint of residents of Apex. Our electricity isn't reliable. It'll go out. Sometimes it'll be 5 minutes, sometimes it'll be 20. And if it goes out from a storm, I'm glad I got a wood burning fireplace. That's what I heard, right? However, we addressed that. We spent a lot of money improving our system. We bought things that I've never even heard of. They're auto reclosers or reclosers. So a recloser For those of you who don't know, imagine you've got your circuit breaker in your house. Imagine one of those, but lots bigger. And something happens. Limb hits somewhere. Snake crawls in where he shouldn't be, which happens. Squirrel crawls in where he shouldn't be, which happens. And it pops the breaker to prevent a fire. The auto recloser says, I'll wait 5 seconds. I'll try to see if I can fix it myself. And if it works, awesome. So if you've ever had your power go out, I don't mean blink, but out, and then within, say, 15 seconds, it just feels like it magically came back on, you can thank these auto reclosers that we've invested in over the years, and we continue to put in more and more and more in order to make sure electricity comes back. In the summer, when it happens from a hurricane, it's miserable when it's 92 degrees and 100% humidity and you've lost power. In the winter, when the freezing rain piles up on a pine tree and it bends over so far it breaks right in half and falls on your roof or power line and you're out of power, right? It's nice to know that some things can help get these things fixed back. But we're going to spend money. We got money to spend on substations. We're going to add some more. And we're going to continue making Apex Electric as good as it can be, or as I like to brand it, peak power. Because when Hurricane Matthew came through, if I remember, that was the name, right? And Beckett Crossing didn't get their power back, and they were wondering why all of Apex has power except Beckett Crossing. That's when we had to tell them, well, you have Duke power there. Because your builder checked the box that said, I want Duke. Now, I'm not playing us against Duke, but we couldn't help them. We saw the limb, we saw what we could fix, and we weren't able to help them because all the Duke trucks were down east where they had a lot worse problems than we did. So I'm not blaming Duke. But we couldn't help Beckett at the time. But Apex Electricity has come light years from where it used to be. And we're ready for the future, and we're spending money on that. We've got $50 million that we're planning to spend over the next 5 years related to parks, recreation, and cultural resources. $38 million is for the Pleasant Park. 25 of that will be spent in the first 5 years. The remainder will come right after that because there's some things you just can't build as fast as you want to. It's a pretty significant park if you've looked at the plan. We're going to spend $9 million on a building on the town campus for a senior activity center. And you know what the best thing about that senior activity center is we asked people, what would you like to see in a senior activity center? So we didn't declare ourselves the smartest people in the world. We said, what would you like to have? And of course, we can't necessarily afford everything. So some things had to, either they couldn't fit because we do have a limited footprint, or we just couldn't figure out how to make it work financially in the big picture. But we're going to build a building there. It'll be multi-use as well. So when the seniors are done with their planned activities, we will have some other things that can happen there because we want to use your taxpayer money efficiently. And we do that by maximizing the utilization of the buildings that we have. We also want to spend $1 million on the greenways. So we're going to continue connecting them, building some new ones, and we'll probably work with some of the developers of future neighborhoods to make sure if there's a good location for greenway, to try to go ahead and see if we can't get it in their master plan and connect it to the next one, and connect it to the next one. So you can actually go greenway, 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 and, well, if you pay attention, you may not end up in Durham, but you never know, right? If you make your way all the way out to the American Tobacco Trail and hang a right, you might end up in Durham if you got the energy for it. So that takes us to transportation. And this is the one I saved for last on purpose. Because transportation is probably the thing that impacts most of us on a daily basis. We were going to spend $46 million on traffic improvements. $20 million, this is over the next 5 years. $20 million is going to be just getting the Peakway finished for 2-lane traffic. We only have 2 sections left. Many of you know the Southwest Connector, which connects generally Whitehall Manor area to the Salem Village area over the tracks. That's the first one. That's about $13 million for that bridge. We're estimating about $7 million for the Southeast connection, For those of you who don't know where that is, if you go past the Walmart and you dead into 55, imagine going straight there. You know where all the 2 left turn lanes are, right? Imagine going straight through there, through those woods, and over to Shefflin Road. When that gets put in, that's about 5 years out, but when that gets put in, we'll have 360 in 2 directions. And it only took us 50 years. I promise, it's been on the map for a long time. Maybe not 50, but it's been on the map for a long time. And, kudos to whoever thought to put that on the map in the first place when this town was only 3,000 people. We're also going to put in sidewalks because walkability is an important part of transportation. Without the sidewalks, you either find yourself facing the question, do I walk in the street or do I walk in the weeds because nobody's mowing this? Or do I walk in the ditch so I don't get hit by a car? Or do I just drive? Right? We want to add more sidewalks. Part of the thing we want to do is look to see where people need them the most and try to start adding them there for places that aren't part of a current build-out situation. Right? Developers will build them. As part of the development, that's one of the things we do in new neighborhoods. Don't put in sidewalks because we ask them. Well, we make them. Right? It's part of the rules. It's part of the UDO. But we say, you go build a street, put a sidewalk there so people can safely walk. But we want to connect some other places. And you've seen over the last few years, you've seen some connections where they weren't before. Right? Center Street has a continuous connection. Old Raleigh Road has a continuous connection. Be nice to have Olive Chapel Road with a continuous walking connection. Be nice to have Kelly Road with a continuous walking connection. Be nice to have Apex Barbecue Road. Now I'm dreaming big. The town manager just went to hide. Did you see that? But we can do it. And we all like that, right? We want some sidewalks. We're going to spend some money on transportation because we know it's necessary. But there's also some things we might need to think outside the box a little bit. And this is where some of you may know I have recently been making a pitch for. And it's okay if you don't agree with me, but I'll make my brief pitch. I didn't like traffic circles when I was younger. I thought they were weird. I thought they were European. We don't need that kind of stuff around here. But then my wife finally took me to the UK, and we rented a car. And then I drove from London up to generally the Manchester area, back down through Wales, then went back a year later, and I drove from Shannon, Ireland, over to Dublin, Ireland. And all those I must have gone through 300 traffic circles in those 2 trips combined. I hardly ever had to stop. There was never an accident. What I realized is everybody around me knows how to use them because they've had practice. And that's the thing, right? If you've never been through a traffic circle, I understand that they can be tricky. But after figuring it out, I was like, this is gorgeous. I roll up to it. I look, because remember, you're on this side of the road now. Yeah. So I look to my right. That was a challenge in itself. Yeah. Oh, and I was driving a 6-shift. So my wife was like this. But you look to your right, and here's the easy rule. Easiest way to learn to drive in traffic circles. If you're not in it, you don't have right of way. If you're in it, you do. Don't stop and let people in. Just get out. It's really that easy. If you get people in a circle and they're trying to be kind and stop and let people in, come on in, come on in. That ruins the traffic circle. The whole point of the circle is it flows until you get out. And if you miss your turn, you don't have to brake. Just do it 3. Just go around and try again. Right? It's awesome. I did that at least once in all those countries I mentioned. I was like, oh, that was my turn. That's all right. Just go around and try again. So I'm making a pitch for traffic circles because I think they're safer. They're more efficient in terms of getting cars through. Because there's nothing I like less than sitting at a light, watching cars go. Oh, wait, I take that back. Sitting at a light, watching no cars go through the intersection. I like that less. And that happens, right? You count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cars sitting here stopped. Here's the green light. And there's no cars. Come on. If there was a circle here, we could all be moving. So I'm making a pitch for them. They don't fit everywhere. They cost a little bit more to do. But guess what? When the electricity does go out, they still work. People don't panic. People don't, everybody stop going, you go. No, you go. So we're working on traffic. Is it great? No, it's not as good as it used to be. But if you think it's bad, I want you to go to Northern Virginia for a week. Anybody from there? You might not make it a week. You'll come back down here and go, it's not really that bad down here. Now, it's not as good as it was. Okay, I admit. But we can do something about that. There's some of these state roads that we can try to work on widening, but we don't own them, so we have to work with the DOT. We have to ask them. We have to work with them. In some cases, if we can afford it, we'll try to fund some of it, or at least work out some kind of temporary loan with them. I don't know. I'm getting into the weeds here. But there are things we can try, and I'm willing to try. And I'm always asking the town manager, can we do this? Can we have somebody go do it? And he'll say something like, we're already talking to him about that. We had that last meeting last month. And here's what they said. Oh, great. All right, good. This is why he's great. All right, he's underappreciated. Now I want to talk about what everybody who lives here thinks of Apex. So we just got back survey results. We had a survey out for, 2 months or so, where people had the opportunity to answer, what do you like here? What do you don't like? Do you know, for the question, this is great. The question generally was, how do you feel about Apex as a place to live? I'm paraphrasing, but that was generally what it was. The neutral or positive or very positive answers, 98%. The guy who told us the results last Tuesday night, he almost was smiling the whole time, like couldn't get it off his face. Because it was the easiest job ever. By the way, I just want to tell you people that, because he's a consultant, right, that 98% of your population really thinks this is a nice place to live. And we're all just going, yeah, Apex, right? We know. And here's another interesting stat. 90% of people said Apex is a great place to work. Now, I thought about that for a second because I thought, well, one of the knocks on us is bedroom community. We don't have enough places of employment, so everybody has to leave town. But you know what? Not everybody does. There's a lot more people working here than we might think. There's a lot of people who work from home. There's a lot of people who work from common grounds. You know what I'm saying? Or the Belgian Cafe, or the Wake Zone, right? They just kind of come downtown and hang out. So we've got a lot going on here. And I know it. And most of us, I think, we know it too. We don't need a survey to tell us that. And that's great, because that strokes our ego, makes us feel good, right? I jumped down to the next questions, though, which was, but what do people feel negative about? Because that's what we can work on fixing. And guess what? Growth, traffic. Those are the top two. So I've talked about those already tonight. Now, I'll skip economic development because I've talked a little bit about some of the other things I wanted to. But I do want to just say this about economic development. Sorry. Have it removed, please. I've always wanted to say that. I carry this with me. This is the only thing I'll say about economic development. I carry this card with me for the last 2 years because it was from North Carolina Business Surveys. What would you guys like to look for if you locate your company somewhere? And this is the results. And so I wrote it down on a card so that I could carry it with me. Just quickly, highway accessibility, 164, 55, 540, no problem. Occupancy and construction costs, well, generally North Carolina is pretty good compared to the rest of the country. Land, let's talk about land for 1 second, because I really need to say this. Cary is 96% built out. The mayor, I was talking to him about, he says, yeah, I don't have those kind of requests anymore. I got people downtown wanting to tear down buildings so they can build something new. Because we're done. We're done building out. Morrisville, same thing, which is ironic. You remember when Morrisville was nothing but a fire department and a store and a church, right? Now it's town. And buildings, do we have available buildings? Skilled labor. Well, we got that in spades. You know, we've got people around here who work very high-tech jobs. We've got very well-rounded people. We've got a wealth of talent, right? We're not a one-skill town, right? And I feel bad for towns who are like 80% coal miners or 80% steel workers or 80%, auto workers. Because if the automaker goes, they're done. We're not that in Apex. We've got a nice array of things going on. Labor costs. Right now we don't have any artificial rate wage lifters. So people look and go, I'll bring a company here. Right to work. This is a right to work state. Proximity to major markets. Raleigh, Durham, right? Major markets. Energy costs. Nuclear plant. All right, that's inexpensive. Whether you like it or not, it's inexpensive power. And the corporate tax rates. These are the things, and I keep this card with me at all times, because if somebody ever wants to say, why should I move my business to your town? I want to say, come, let's have lunch. I want to share some stuff with you about Apex. So in conclusion, you're waiting for this part, right? In conclusion, there are a few things I want us to think forward, and I'll talk to the council members. We're going to have a workshop next month. In that workshop, we do this every year. In that workshop, one of the things we're going to review is priorities. What are the town's priorities? Perfect timing. We've got this survey back that's going to help us focus on two things, and this comes from going through Cisco Management School and also MBA and good leadership training, all those kind of things, right? There are two things. If you want to maximize an employee, you identify some things that are negatives and try to make them not so negative. And you identify things that are strong positives and accentuate them. Figure out how to maximize them, because that's how that person can be most effective on your team. We can do the same thing for the town of Apex. What are the things we're not good at, and make sure that we don't stink at them anymore? Figure out how do we address them. Will it ever be number one? I don't know. We did pretty well with the electric problem. So we know what those are. Traffic, growth, how do we manage that? Part of that is planning. So remember the whole rezoning, all that stuff, right? We have to go all the way back to the beginning, figure out what do we change on the land use map so that we get the fallout that we want. And how do we maximize the things that are doing great? And if we don't know what we're doing great, then we'll start slipping. So we have to be able to identify those. So at this workshop, we're going to talk about the things that are important, and we will do a ranking exercise that we will use as our Bible or North Star or whatever term you want to call it for the year, so that when we say, well, we have this much money to spend, how do we want to apportion it? What are the most important things to spend that money on? Or to spend our time resources on, right? We have a good town staff, but as a town manager, be quick to tell you, he could do a whole lot more with more people. But we have to figure out what's the right balance for that. So we can't do everything. He's quick to say that too. Can't do everything. Well, I'll take that back. He says, we can do anything you want, you just have to fund it, right? After we do our priorities, then we'll do what we call our capital improvement plan. So the things I was talking to you about earlier, the 5 years out, right? That's part of the capital improvement plan. You probably know the term capital or capital assets, right? Anything the town invests money into and we have something to show for it is called capital or a capital asset. So when we put in a tennis court, remember I talked about parks? We're converting some of those soccer fields to artificial turf. That's an investment. That's a capital expense. That investment will pay back, and we did a prototype of it here at Hunter Street, and it's been gangbusters. I would bet, and I haven't seen the actual numbers, but I would bet we have 200% utility of that field from what we had when it was or for any field that's a natural grass field, where you can't play it in the rain or in the snow or in the summer when it's too hot or it needs a rest. Right now we can play all day, every day, even if it's raining or snowing, people can still play. And they do. We want to spend the money wisely, but we got to make sure we know what is our CIP going to look like for the next 5 years? And guess what? Every year, we change it a little bit. And that's what we should do. Because last year, we had a 5-year look on what 2022 was going to be. But this year, we're a year closer. We might know something else that we didn't know a year ago. So we revisit it to see if it still makes sense, or if we need to switch a few things. This is how we're planning for the future. And then past 5 years, we even have a list called the Horizon List. That's ambitious, isn't it? 5+. It's on the radar, kind of, but we don't know how we're going to fund it yet. Our intention is to bring the voice of Apex to that room, and that's why you voted for folks, so they can go in that room, and you don't have to. And we'll figure out what the priorities are based on everything people's been telling us. And sometimes not everybody agrees, and that's okay. But what we have to be willing to do is find that middle ground that gets things done. I don't want gridlock in Apex. I don't want to shut down in Apex. We're going to move forward. We're going to get things done. Apex is the greatest place to live. That's why I've never left. When I went to school at NC State, I asked my wife, then girlfriend, will you marry me, but there's a condition, we have to live in Apex. And she said, of course. So here we came back. I don't want to ever leave here. And part of the reason I ran for mayor is so that I know that Apex is going to be the kind of place I want to retire into. I know it's changing. I don't mind change. I just want it to be a great place in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, so that we can all continue to live here and love Apex like we always have. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. I know you can do something else.
So the idea here is we have a project that is funded, or near enough funded, right? That we're going to lease that CSX land. We're going to improve it at our expense, but it will be a structured parking area, not structured as in vertical, but structured as in curb, asphalt, stripes, etc. You can park here, you can't park here, right? Make it really clear. So you don't end up doing, one of these kind of park jobs, making sure you don't fall off the hill. So that's about $250K for that project. The other part of that, and I mentioned downtown parking, so I shouldn't continue without mentioning also that I'm continuing to have conversations about the Saunders Street parking that's, behind here, all this back here. Right now it's flat parking. And there's a gravel lot that we lease to allow people to have a sort of overflow parking. We would like very much to work with developers. If you know anybody who wants to get together and do a project, a joint project, I'm pitching a mixed use kind of scenario. So I'll try to give it my 30-second vision of that is imagine the fronts of the downtown businesses or this building that you're in here, okay, these building style. Imagine that combined with sort of the look of like maybe an old mill or a textile mill or something like a tobacco warehouse sort of thing. Imagine that built on that space with storefronts on the first floor on the two sides that face this way and Saunders, with offices in the L shape on the second floor, and with residential condominiums on the third and fourth floors. But behind all that L is 5 floors of parking, all hidden back in there. So the building looks vintage. It basically will double the feel of our downtown, the look and feel, but the mixed use nature of that will provide a solution for people who want to live as close as possible to the downtown, and there are people who want to live as close as possible to the downtown. It'll provide more offices where there are not enough, where people want to say, I just want a little office downtown. I don't need much space. Give me a 10 by 10 and a door. I'll put my own desk in, right? Get me downtown. That'll solve that. It'll also help provide potentially 1,000 spaces for parking. And we can work out the rules as to, who gets a private space for the people who have space there, condominium or office condo or residential condo, versus whoever wants to park to be downtown, right? Residential parking, whether it's free or permitted or whatever. There's some ideas here that if we bring the right people to this project, it can get built. It'll be awesome. When you're done, if you use kind of the reclaimed brick, and some of you, if you follow me on Facebook, you may have seen I changed my Facebook background, which was like sort of this aged painting on a brick wall, right? It was kind of an example to me of that sort of feel, like, you know, when Pepsi used to paint on the side, or Coke used to paint on the side of a brick building, and it'd been there for 25 years and it's starting to fade, right? That sort of look. You get that down there, I think that would be a great project for parking downtown, and I think that's another area that the town of Apex would be willing to bring the land to the table and bring a set of rules. If you can meet all these rules as a group, then we'd love to see that, because it solves everybody's problems and it's win-win-win.